Hello and welcome to helpyourmath.com. In this video, we are going to find the midpoint and the distance between two given points. So we have these 2 points in the coordinate plane. To find both the midpoint and the distance, if you're going to use the formulas, it might be helpful to label the points. I'm going to label my first point, just because it's the first one, x sub 1 and y sub 1, and the second one, x sub 2, y sub 2. Now the midpoint, we can find the coordinates of the midpoint, so I'm going to say x of the midpoint, comma y of the midpoint is given by, it's actually just the average of the x coordinates and the average of the y coordinates. So the midpoint is itself a point in the coordinate plane where we take the average of the x coordinates, so that's adding them up and dividing by 2. And that's our x coordinate, and our y coordinate is adding up the y coordinates that were given and dividing by 2. Okay, so we have x sub 1 minus 9 plus x sub 2 minus 5 divided by 2, comma, y sub 1 is minus 4, and y sub 2 is 1. Notice again that I'm adding these together because we are finding the average. Okay, so negative 9 plus negative 5, they're both negative, so we add them and keep the common sign. For the y coordinates, negative 4 plus 1, we would actually subtract and keep the sign of the 4. I'm going to clean this up just that I don't have to worry about the y coordinate because I can just leave it as negative 3 over 2. That's fine. If you want to convert it, it's negative 1.5 or negative 1.5. The x coordinate, negative 14 over 2, that's an integer. We want to write the integer. 14 divided by 2 is 7. A negative divided by a positive is negative. So our midpoint, I'm going to write it as negative 7, comma, negative 3 over 2. But again, you can write it as either negative 1.5 or negative 1.5 also, and those would also both be correct. Now for the distance. So the distance formula is really just an interpretation of the Pythagorean theorem. I love the Pythagorean theorem. I would love to graph this, but I don't really have enough space, so I will use the formula. The formula here, since it is a distance, when we do the square root, we only consider the positive because distance has to be positive. And here we subtract, we're finding the difference between x sub 2 and x sub 1. The difference between the x coordinates, and we square it, and the difference between the y coordinates, and we square that. So when I go to plug in, I get x sub 2, negative 5 minus negative 9, being very careful with these negatives. Big mistakes can happen if you just say like, oh look, there's a subtraction, I don't have to worry about the negative 9. You do have to worry about the negative 9. You do. And then we have minus 5. Oh, sorry, that's the x coordinate again. Let's try that again. 1 minus negative 4. And then this becomes plus positive, and this becomes plus positive. Great. So we have negative 5 plus 9 is now positive 4, which really doesn't need to be in parentheses, but I like it just for the emphasis. And 1 plus 4 is 5. Even if these were negative, we're squaring them, so they would turn positive. We don't want to make any silly mistakes. These will become positive. 4 squared is 16, 5 squared is 25. When we add those together, we get the square root of 41. 41 is a prime number, so it's not going to have any perfect square factors. If we could simplify, we would simplify since it does say write the distance in exact radical form. We don't want to use our calculator and get the approximate decimal here. And so we're just going to say our distance is the square root of 41. So we found the midpoint and the distance using their respective formulas. Thank you for stopping by.